On the last river, which was the river Pishon, we learned about the importance of being sameach bechelkai, being happy with our lot. And we understood that being happy with our lot and being happy with our surrounding circumstances is not the starting point. It's not about, oh, look at what you have and be happy with it. What we understood was being happy with our lot is being happy with the essential self that's there, which isn't reliant on anything. It's automatically there. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need you to do anything. It's there. And that's your essential connection to your soul or to the expansiveness that's in the world. And a person that doesn't have that relationship or a deeper relationship with themselves isn't able to access a place of being happy with their lot. And we're going to understand why that is. But before we do, I want everyone to just recalibrate. So we're going to do a short meditation just to get ourselves centered out of all of the noise that may be taking place in our lives. So I want everyone just to close their eyes. Position yourself comfortably on the chair that you're sitting on. Bring your attention to your breath. Allow your breath to bring a state of calm, a state of presence, a focus solely on the now. Any thoughts that arise in your mind, slowly allow yourself to regain a sense of center, redirect your mind to your breath. And I want you to do something which you may have never done, and that is I want you to inhabit your body. I want you to feel the energy in your hands without even feeling anything by moving your fingers or looking at anything. I want you to just feel the vitality that's pulsating in your hands. Maybe feel it in your knees or in your feet. And bring your awareness just to be in your body. A still calm and subtle sensitivity to the life that's innate inside every single one of us. With that, I want you to open your eyes and retain a state of presence and understand that this innate state of presence is something that is interrupted because of our thoughts, because of our thinking. It's not our fault. We've been taught to associate with thought. We've been taught that the definition of who we are is because we are thinking. But essentially that's not the self. The self is innate inside of you. The self is always there, no matter what you do, no matter how productive you are, no matter what you have in front of you or you don't have in front of you, you're always there. And a very easy access point is to bring yourself back into your body, stop thinking, and feel present in every single moment. What we're going to be discussing on this river, the river of Gihon, is the element of joy, happiness. So where we were speaking last week about the concept of presence and the concept of one's chelek, the concept of one's portion, we're going to speak about how a person is able to feel joy, to feel happiness in their life, to feel a sense of resonance with life. And what we're going to see is a very stark juxtaposition between true happiness, a true state of being, versus an external expression of happiness or an external involvement with happiness. So what I want to bring your attention to is the first source here. And this source is from Tehillim, in which King David says, Sameach nefesh avadecha, ki eilecha Adonai nafshi esa. My soul is happy because I lift it up to you. My soul is happy because I lift it up to you. So we see a link between joy, happiness, the soul, and the concept of lifting up, to which Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch gives us a very beautiful and deep insight as to what this means to lift up your soul. So I'm going to read it in the Hebrew. Try and follow along. So what does it mean, Sameach nefesh? What does it mean to be a person that has joy or happiness inside of you? Simchas nefesh hi tchushas hanefesh hamargisha atzma gadla umisracheves. I'm not going to finish off that sentence because I want you to be attentive to the subtleties here. The feeling of happiness comes from a feeling of expanding, growing. So if you in your own mind or in your own life can sort of have glimmers of happiness, where does happiness take place in your life? So what are some moments of joy, some moments of happiness? So a person on a very basic level can get a very small amount of happiness maybe when they buy something new. How is that a expansion?
You're filling your cupboards more.
You're filling your cupboards. You have something extra, some expansion of you. You can maybe now look a little bit different. Oh, look, I've got more colors in my palette. As how do I express myself? What's another form of expansion that gives you happiness?
A grandchild.
A grandchild or a child.
The very little happiness I experience is when I can do something for someone else besides myself.
Good, okay. We're going to get to that. That's the highest state of happiness. Excellent. But on a basic level, things that you don't really need to do, apart from find something nice to buy, or children, I guess if you're a woman, you have to do quite a lot. But the general aspect of just a new child or a grandchild, that's an expansion of you, isn't it? That gives you a sense of happiness.
And cooking for people.
Okay, these are higher levels of happiness. Okay, we're talking about the basic levels so far. Basic levels of happiness. What are the simple joys or simple happiness that a person can experience? Food, excellent. So culinary experiences. I have this Woolworths magazine that is beautifully done, and the amounts of food and things that you can taste. I mean, I've never even seen these, like they have this whole page in Franschhoek of this French chef that like makes these like squid nets with like, I was like, I've never even heard of food like that. But these are experiences of expansion. Understand? They are experiences where you go and you expand beyond your immediate self. So it can be through experience, through taste, through purchasing things, through relationships. So when you have lots of friends and you can speak to a lot of people and relate to a lot of people and have a lot of people around you to branch out into, then you're expanding yourself, aren't you? When your kids are doing well at school, or they're doing well in their marriages or in their jobs, or they become sustainable, or whatever it may be, you get a sense of joy. Yeah, the archetypal mother that wants their son to be a doctor or a lawyer. You know, that's the feeling of expansion. This is my expanded self. But what he says here is the archetypal expansion, or the most truest or deepest form of expansion that exists, is b'koyach ruchani u'msorei b'karasei. There is another form of expansion, which we're going to notice momentarily. B'ne'emunosei l'choivasei, an understanding of one's obligation, b'achnasei, through a humbling of the self. We're going to see another form of expansion. B'yirasa, a sense of awe for something will provide us with a sense of expansion. Ba'avosa, love. Love is expansion, isn't it? Love is one of the biggest things that gives simcha. Why is it one of the biggest things that gives simcha? Love essentially is now I'm expanding beyond just me. Why are people so lonely when they don't have someone?
They can't express to someone or love or hold or cuddle or do.
They don't have a way of expanding beyond the self. You know, you have someone just by themselves, or you have these teenagers, you know, that are by themselves, that all they think about is how they can expand through love. I don't know if you know this, but the 90% of a person who is in a state of teenagehood, their thoughts are all about love. That's all it's about how to attain love, if not 99% of their thinking. And that is a sense of trying to expand outside of the self, trying to engage outside of the self. So now, understandably, if a person is not expanding in a healthy way, if they don't have a sense of expansion in a healthy way, it will start to express itself in expanding in a very, very destructive way as well, instead. So I don't want to conclude this source. So let's move to the third source, in which there's a discussion in the Gemara in Chagiga. And it says, from one end of the heavens to the other. And the Gemara asks, what does this mean, from one end of the heavens to the other? The Gemara answers, this phrase teaches us something, and Rebbe Lazar taught us the following lesson. The height of Adam, the first man, reached from the ground to the skies. So he learns from one end of the heavens to the other means that the height of Adam reached from the ground to the skies. And when he sinned by eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which essentially we've identified as the infection of the ego, as soon as the ego came into existence, which was through the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it says that God placed his hand upon him and diminished him. Rav Yehuda said, in the name of Rav, the size of Adam, the first man, was from one end of the world to the other. And he says that he was diminished in that state as well. The Gemara asks in the final lines there, if so, the two parts of the verse contradict each other, since one indicates that his height reached the heavens, while the other says it reached the end of the earth. And the Gemara gives us a very enigmatic answer. The Gemara answers, both this and that are one, the same measure. What does that mean? So this is the secret of the second river of Gihon. And we identified Gihon being the river of expansion. So where we dealt with the first river Pishon being our identity. How do we identify with ourselves? Is it our external appearance? Is that primary? Or is our soul the innate I am, the innate awareness and consciousness, the vitality that's in your body, your breath, and your just conscious state of being, is that primary? And then your appearance and the things that you own are secondary. That's what we dealt with on the first river of Pishon. The second river is all about expansion. Rav Hirsch says that the concept of happiness comes from the word simcha, and simcha is directly associated with the word tzmicha. Tzmicha is to sprout out. It's a sprouting out. So experiences of happiness and joy is experienced when you sprout out, when you grow out, when you become expanded in some way. Now we identified that the second part, that the ego, apart from materialism and apart from externalities and apart from the dearth of self-definition and vitality in defining oneself by physicality and not the essential self, there is another danger of the ego, and that is a person has a feeling of trying to break out, trying to expand through experiences, through lusts, through desires, through simple feelings of I need to expand out, and they feel almost boxed in, they feel caged in. So it's no wonder that the river of Gihon was associated with heat. Heat, we said it surrounds the land of Cush. Cush is a place of immense heat, and it's a place of desire. It's this heat in the body of I need to go shopping, I need to buy another house, I need to expand outside of myself, I need to go traveling. A feeling of lust that might come into a person, a feeling of desire, I need to eat that, I need to experience that. A desire to constantly have a fix. But the fix sometimes comes in the most subtle things, like watching a Netflix. So what's the fix that you get with a Netflix? You feel like, what's going on? I feel so stuck, I feel so depressed, I feel so, So let me watch something on Netflix. So if you're a woman, you'll watch something romantic about love and about, no, you don't do that? Fauda, of course, you'll watch Fauda, and it's about blowing people up and about death and about terrorism.
Because we have to learn Hebrew.
And you have to learn Hebrew. Practice it, of course. So these desires to watch Netflix, to give you a fix. To give you a fix of what? To give you a fix of expansion. That when you're sitting there and you're watching something, you're expanding artificially. Now that artificial expansion sometimes can be good just to, you know how you jump start a car? So sometimes you need to jump start a car in order to get your engine running again. Sometimes you need a jump start. Sometimes you get a nice coffee, gets you moving. Sometimes you need to get something nice to eat, gets you moving. Sometimes you need to switch off. Sometimes you need to watch something inspiring that gets you moving. Sometimes you need these external forces in order to get you moving. But the danger is that when we place all of our expansion on one axis, and this is what it means, that the dimensions of man Adam HaRishon, is an argument between it being from the earth to the heavens, or from one end of the earth to the other. One end of the world to the other. What are these two different axes? So if you imagine you have the horizontal axes and you have the vertical axes. Both are axes of expansion. And what we see here is two different opinions as to where man expands. What is his archetypal form of expansion? Is it in a horizontal platform of experience, physical experience? Or is there another place of expansion called the vertical state of expansion? From the earth to the heavens. Now, the answer that the Gemara gives is these seemingly contradict one another. Which one is it? Which one are you? Which do you define yourself by? And it's almost that you can't coexist in expanding. If you're a person that expands physically and that's your focus, it's almost impossible for you to expand healthily within the vertical platform. And the more vertically expanded you are, which we'll try and understand what that is, the less need you feel to expand horizontally.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
And this is what it means that they are one. They are the same measure. Which means you almost have a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of fuel. And if that fuel is leaking out horizontally, you don't have enough jet fuel to get you vertical. But the more you use vertically, the less you need horizontally. And essentially what that means is pas b'melach teichal. The way of the Torah is that you need bread and water and you sleep on the floor. Which essentially is saying that you don't need anything more. You are sustainable in the most basic ways, and everything that is beyond bread and water and sleeping on the floor is a plus. So now imagine how happy every circumstance in your life is. You have a bed. You are able to eat some nice pineapple. You are able to drive. These are the most amazing forms of expansion, because essentially I'm not relying on the horizontal to expand to bring me joy. I have my own sense of expansion that is automized or in my hands. Now when I'm expanding, there is less pressure on the expansion externally. That's why you'll notice the source. We'll skip these sources 4 and 5 for the time being. Source 6. Bara Kadosh Baruch Hu Yetzer Hara or Bara Lo Torah Tavlin. So God created the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is the ego. Once we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the ego came into us. And the ego loves to expand. It loves expanding. It loves fast cars. I guess if you're watching Fauda and you're women, you also like fast cars. Well, maybe not. And you like Fast and Furious. You like motorbikes, don't you? Motorbikes, I know that. But whatever it is, your form of expansion, if it's bulkas, if it's movies, if it's other forms of expansion, shopping. So all of these forms, when they get into a state of, I constantly need more. Always more. It's not enough. Which essentially, if you look at the form of expanding of one way on the earth to another, that horizontal platform of expansion, we know that the earth is round. So all you're doing essentially is chasing your tail. So no matter how much you have and how much you've experienced and what you've ever got, you always need more, because the telltale sign of the ego is it always wants more. It's never enough. And that's what it means here, that God created the Yetzer Hara, and he also created the Torah. Tavlin literally means a pickling sauce. So you know, like if you have like olives, you can't eat the olives if they're not pickled. So essentially, he's allowed us to pickle our ego, which he's allowed us to consume our ego in a healthy way. Our ego now becomes a healthy form of consumption rather than a detrimental form of expansion. So now your expanding isn't in the form of feeding the self, the deeper you, trying to, hopelessly. But it's a form of relating and enjoying the world around you. Food becomes the most beautiful thing. Relationships have become the most beautiful thing. Your love or your relationship to your children or your spouse or your family or your community or the people around you, your friends, isn't in the form of consumption. You're not relying on them to expand because you are an expanded being. There's an innate internal expansion that exists. There's less pressure on the external. And that's essentially the secret that we're learning here as the Torah being a Tavlin. Because the point of Torah, the point of engaging with Torah, and we're going to try and identify what is Torah, but essentially the point of engaging with a vertical form of expansion, a soul expansion, from the earth to the heavens expansion, an internal deepening of the self expansion, then you automatically have less of a drive or a necessity to expand horizontally. Now I want to show you two very, very abrasive and quite shocking sources, but I debated sharing these with you because they're quite hectic. Source 4 and 5, but I think it's important to understand what they're saying on a deeper level. Source 4 and 5 are going to give us an indication as to what it looks like to be a person that focuses solely on the expansion of the horizontal. The first source indicates, and you'll notice that it's said in the second last line there, that Bilam Harasha, Bilam the evil one, is cooked in boiling semen. That in the world to come, or in the hell that he lives in, he is boiling in a vat of semen. Quite extreme, isn't it? And then in source 5, it brings another individual who we won't mention by name, but there is another individual who is punished by boiling in a vat of boiling excrement. And that are their punishments in the world to come. Now the question we need to ask is, what is the significance of these forms of punishment? Apart from being substantially disgusting, I'm sure we can think of some other things, like they are forced to eat the nails of people. What is the significance of these concepts that we are taught? So on a deeper level, we have to understand the following. A person that focuses solely on the expansion of the horizontal is a person that is enveloped by this great, unsatiable desire to expand. And the two forms of boiling in a vat of semen versus boiling in a vat of excrement are symbols of the pain that a person feels in this form of expansion. Which means that the initial form that a person may feel, which most teenagers feel, or most people that become addicted in a concept of licentiousness or lust or pornography, is the concept of boiling in a vat of semen, which means that they are boiled by their lusts. There is an endless, unsatiable form of lust which is continuous, and it's an addiction that they can't deal with. It's unique to understand that it's brought down that there are certain things in life that the more you starve it, the more satiated it becomes, and the more you feed it, the more hungry it gets. And these are addictions. And we're understanding that what has to happen in order to start to alleviate unhealthy boiling in one's lusts and desires is to curb the expansion on the horizontal platform axes and start to engage with an internal form of expansion in the vertical platform, which we're going to do together in a moment. Another one of that is to boil in a vat of excrement. So what does excrement resemble? Excrement, to excrete means you remove from your body the psoilis, the parts of the food that isn't nourishing. So you absorb the nourishment, and excrement is essentially the parts of the food that have no nourishment. And what it means to be boiled by that means that your life becomes subsumed by expansion with no nourishment. So this endless desire to watch episode after episode after episode after episode. Netflix does a beautiful job of allowing the next episode to come up 5 seconds later, and you're like, well, I just watched 10, but maybe one more. Like, how many do you need? And essentially you've come out with nothing. So you're boiled in a vat of excrement. And it may be an experience of, well, I'll just buy this for my house, and then you bought it, and then just one more thing for my house, and then you got that, and then just one, and it's never, and it's a constant boiling of the self in a vat of excrement or semen. I mean, you can choose which one you want to boil in,
Of course.
Go to source 7. Source 7 teaches us the secret of its expansion. And it speaks about the angels. We sing this on Shabbos, which is really about expansion, isn't it? Shabbos is all about expansion. But it says, Smeichim etzeisam v'sasim b'voyam. Smeichim etzeisam v'sasim b'voyam. Which means they are happy with their going out and joyful with their coming in. Now a healthy individual has both of these. A healthy individual is sameach betzeisam v'sosim b'voyam. They have a sosin in their coming in, and they are happy with their exiting. Which means that life is a balance of externally expanding in the horizontal. You need to drive. You need to be involved with buying things. You need to be proud of your house. You need to be involved with your appearance. And that needs to be a healthy spot of expansion. And the only way that that is healthy is if you have an expansion of sasim b'voyam. Sasim b'voyam is a joy of coming in. What does it mean to come in? It means to come inside yourself. To expand inside yourself. So I want everyone to, once you've finished writing any notes, to put your pens down. And where initially we started our meditation in just quietening the mind and bringing yourself into the present. What I want to do with you is have a sense of the expansion that's inside of you. That's innate inside of you. So let's bring ourselves back into the energy that we felt in our bodies and into our breaths. Quietening the mind. being aware of the silence that underpins everything around you and inside of you. You might hear the sound of the seagulls, and you might hear the motor of the fridge, or even the words of Rebbetzin Maisels next door, or even your own breath. But try and listen to the silence that underpins see the space in between my words, in between your thoughts, in between the sounds. Feel a sense of calm and tranquility that comes over you. Allowing yourself to dissolve into that stillness, into that silence. Bringing yourself back to the room and retaining, despite your consciousness and awareness of what's taking place around you, understanding that that silence and that stillness is still there, hasn't gone away. It's in the background, but understanding that that is primary, that stillness and that silence is punctuated by the noise or the sounds that surround us, the sights that surround us, but the essential form of existence is still. And this is the concept of smeichim b'tseisam esasim b'voyam, that you can be happy with going out. Now, imagine the joy that you have now, just to go out. It's like you're present, you're expanding inside of yourself. You didn't have to really do anything apart from just remove the external self. And now imagine when you are walking through the world and not needing it to expand you, you're essentially expanding, innately expanding. And then your engagement with the world becomes a form of internal expansion as well. That when you eat, or when you relate to someone else, or when you buy a new clothing, or even when you go and have a cool experience, you are resonating with the inner stillness that's inside of that experience, the inner state of oneness and expansiveness that's underlying everything. Understanding that there is that still expansion in the food that you consume, that in the garments that you wear, there's a stillness there as well. Now, in the state which humanity has very much lost, but is quickly coming back to because of the deep pain of boiling in these vats, is fundamental to be a person that expands healthily, that enjoys life, that isn't abusing life, that life isn't abusing them, that they're not abusing themselves, really. So I'm going to end off with a few understandings of what it means to expand vertically, that we can maybe have practically in our own lives. And I want to turn your attention to source 9. The source 9 tells us a fascinating story. One day, Rabbi Yochanan was bathing in the Jordan River, and Reish Lakish saw him and jumped into the Jordan, pursuing him. At that time, Reish Lakish was the leader of a band of marauders. Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, "Your strength is fit for Torah study." Reish Lakish said to him, "Your beauty is fit for women." Which means he mistook him for a woman. He was so beautiful. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "If you return to the pursuit of Torah, I will give you my sister in marriage, who is more beautiful than I am." Reish Lakish accepted upon himself to study Torah. Subsequently, Reish Lakish wanted to jump back out of the river to bring back his clothes, but he was unable to return, as he had lost his physical strength as soon as he accepted the responsibility to study Torah upon himself. Fascinating. I mean, what happened? In one moment he lost all of his strength. And this is the understanding that Torah and mitzvahs are deeply associated with this internal stillness and expansion. When a person learns Torah, when a person davens, when a person does mitzvahs for the right reasons, not for an egoic definition, not because I'm religious and look at the activities I do to make myself religious and look at all the boxes I need to tick because I'm religious, but rather because there is an internal stillness that the activities innately, when they are given to us by God, or engaging with spiritual wisdom, is a form of engaging with that stillness. Even taking upon yourself to do that, even bringing in yourself an awareness of essentially who you are, automatically removes the strength of the physical. It doesn't mean that you become weak and meager. It just means that the strength of the heat of these vats of boiling subsides. So practically, there's an interesting way of expanding, which is almost a nexus between the physical and spiritual, and that's called exercise. Exercise is a fundamental step in expanding because it forces you to go outside of yourself. The pain and the threshold of, if you're running or whatever you're doing, swimming, doing aerobics, whatever it is that you choose to exercise with, lifting weights, it forces you to reach a state of physicality which you don't want to do it anymore physically, and you have to expand inwards. You have to go beyond yourself. So to engage with that, to engage with exercise, which you see today's society is becoming really enraptured by, and there's no surprise to us why, because they're very, very frustrated. And it's quite interesting that the expansion of exercise in the horizontal scientifically is linked to being less frustrated sexually, less frustrated mentally, less frustrated physically. These are fundamental things because you're forced to expand internally. But if you want more, because exercise is not going to be enough, it is very healthy and very important to daily exercise and push yourself beyond your physical boundaries in some capacity, even for 15 minutes. It's one of the most fundamental spiritual activities you can do on a basic level. But then to slowly integrate expansion through activities of stillness. So sitting down to learn something alone, or sitting to learn something with someone else, just for the sake of doing something beyond your ego. To pray is a state of expansion. It's a vertical expansion. Once you are bolstered by all of these activities, it will be easier for you to attain a sensitivity and a primary definition of the stillness that's inside of you and in your life around you and inside of you. Once you have the spiritual nutrients of exercise and of the mitzvot and of learning and of engaging with the forms of giving, as Audrey was talking about, the giving of the self, which again is essentially an expansion beyond you, isn't it? A person that gives is expanding beyond themselves. That's a very, very healthy thing to do, to reach a state of spiritual stillness, of tranquility inside of you. You'd think it's the most unobvious engagement that you could do, isn't it? And then silent meditation through this stillness, which is essentially how we should be engaging with life on a consistent basis. And this is what we then are able to attain, a state of true joy, a true happiness that life is there to be engaged with. Are there any questions?
Did you start this through a river?
Yes.
Which one?
You'll get the recordings.
Oh, that should be amazing. How can I get this?
There's an app. You don't have it?
No.
Oh, it's amazing.
Any other questions?
When you speak about the Netflix and all these things, Rabbi,
Yeah, if anyone needs to go, I know we're a little bit over time, so go. Yeah, there's no stress here, yeah?
it's not just for adults, it's for kids as well, right?
100%.
That's where I see it the most.
That's the danger, for kids to expand constantly through the screen. You know, it says that Adam, or before a person is born, they have a light that's lit up above their head, and they can see from one spot of the world all the way to the next.
Yeah.
That's another form of expansion. So when you tap into that stillness that we felt underlying creation, you almost are no longer bound by your physical entrapped reality, but you've now expanded into the entire world. You're one with everything. And that's an ability of seeing from one spot of the earth to the end. What we try and do is we replicate that through Netflix, through watching programs about terrorists in Israel, and engaging with the news, Gewalt, that's the worst one, yeah, to see all the things that are happening around the world. It gives you a state of expansion. Wow, look, you know, this person died there, and that happened there, and that's going on there. That's an artificial form of expansion, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the danger with that is when we are addicted to sitting there and having this light, almost the phone there that's lit above our head, saying, look, I can see from one spot of the earth all the way to the other, but you're not really. You're not actually tapping into the deeper experience of expansion that's there, which is through the vertical, through this prism of the deep axes from heaven to earth or earth to the heavens. Now remember, it's not you going up, it's you going in and dissolving the external to become one with everything that's around you. Yeah?
Thank you, because all of this I see with Alexis, the sweeties. I just want this food. What makes you happy? Come, let's go to the shop. What do you want? Let's go buy. What do you eat? Mommy, sweetie. Mommy,
You must be careful though, because children are not at a state of having this sensitivity and maturity to internally expand. So to abrasively stop expanding for children could cause them to really have experiences of severe loss of who they are. So you can't implement this with kids. It needs to be done in a healthy way. So if kids are watching too much Netflix or too much, then we understand. It can't be 3 hours a day, but you have to do it in a healthy way. And of course they need to get sweets, and of course they need to get clothes. And of course you yourself need those things as well. You need those things as well. But the sensitivity is what is primary to you. Who are you essentially, primarily, where are you primarily expanding? Is it the internal, the vertical, or the external? So instead of abrasively putting a halt onto your child or your own forms of expansion, start to actively engage with internal expansion, and then you'll see that you have less of a desire externally. So instead of taking away Alexis's sweets, spend more time with her face to face. Talk to her more. Give her experiences of real forms of inner expansion, relationships, exercise, going out into the nature. Give your children that experience, and you'll see that there's less of a desire to expand in terms of what they're watching and what they're consuming. And that goes for you as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Pleasure. All right, guys.